When you tell a teacher, coach, or another parent that your child has complex congenital heart defect, they don't know what to do with it. Often people counter with terror or complacency. People don't know where to put it or what to do with that information. Above all, they focus on the physical. But there is so much more to your child than their heart. I am so thrilled to be here, and you all in some way or another live with congenital heart disease. And I'm a nurse who has worked with families like you for, I think it's just about over 30 years now. And I have been mostly doing research in the last number of years about what you live. And I had a parent of a child with congenital heart disease write the foreword for a report that I published recently. And so she went on to say about this research project that she was a part of. She said, Gwen's group asked very hard questions. They asked parents to look past their gratitude and thankfulness and to frankly describe the reality of our lives and our needs. It's as though I've been handed a dot-to-dot puzzle, but there's no numbers on the dots, nothing to guide me in making my connections. I have concerns, but I don't know where to put them. Conventional answers don't work. As a parent, all I would like is a place within the system where I could take my concerns and the people involved would understand and help me connect the dots. Needing more doesn't negate gratefulness. And so what I want to do today is I want to share some findings from my research that will talk about some of the more that you need, but will also really address the more in terms of your child is not just a heart diagnosis. And I'm glad that I'm not the first one today to use the word trauma. I've been very careful about using that word over the last number of years, but I do want to talk a bit about parent trauma, child trauma. And then I want to talk about how do we move from behavior. We and our children and we as parents can have pretty big behavior when there is this layer of trauma on this. And so we're going to talk a bit about then how do we move from some of that big behavior to the emotions that are deep down. One of my favorite child psychiatrists, and he's from years ago, a British fellow. He's done some really wonderful writing about parenting, and Donald Winnicott. And he says, there's never a baby alone. And that sounds like a pretty obvious thing to say. But he really focuses on the and. And that's as well what I hope we get out of this session together is that there is something very profound that happens between you and your child. And that's what I'm going to call the and. So whether it's baby and parent, child and parent, teen and parent, there's a real significant, profound mystery in that relationship, in the connection. And no matter what you've been through, there is a lot of amazing soothing and delight in that relationship that you have, and I hope we can get to that. So again, I've conducted a number of studies over the years, and I just want to give you a little taste of some of that. When I was doing my dissertation, I interviewed the parents of several children who had hypoplastic left heart syndrome, and in my center where I was doing my PhD, these are some of the first survivors that we had in Edmonton, and we were doing the classic Norwood at that point. And what I found is that parents safeguarded survival. They safeguarded the survival of their child, and this was in many cases doing things to save them physically, but they also really safeguarded themselves as the parents, and that was a lot in the emotional realm. And they safeguarded other relationships, especially the couple relationship. And when I finished that study, and you have your little PhD badge and you go out to present, I had people say to me, Gwen, it's not that bad anymore. We're doing home monitoring and we're doing a whole different surgery. And so I thought, okay, I'll replicate that study right away. So I did. So I got some more money, and this time I interviewed mothers and fathers and grandparents, because they have this amazing bird's eye into your life. And these happen to be children that were in a different cohort in terms of surgery. But a lot of the story was the same. And so I built some more theory and understanding. And this work I talked about in terms of parenting under pressure. And what I described based on hours and hours of data from parents and grandparents is that there was this multi-phase process that repeated itself but started, and this was often at the time of an antenatal diagnosis, when you realized and adjusted to the inconceivable of a heart diagnosis. You realized the precariousness of survival, and you got really busy at adjusting your expectations. Quickly, you're growing increasingly attached, so that sort of went to the next phase. You started to see your baby as a child, as your child. You started imagining the future for your child. And yet at the same time, you're always expected to watch for and accommodate the unexpected. You needed to be able to recognize potential problems, make critical decisions. And you sort of would feel like you'd get to another phase, and you all know all these phases in your life where you thought, okay, we're in this period of maybe being a bit more stable, and then new challenges, and you'd be back up the top again. This is inconceivable. And again, I've always said I'm about resilience, and I want to present everything that parents tell me in a very positive way. But I started getting pushback from that. And so I had a wonderful graduate student who's now a nurse practitioner in our program in Edmonton. And she delved into the PTSD literature, the traumatic stress literature, vigilance, hypervigilance. And what she ended up doing then is analyzing all the data I had from a lens of trauma, stress. And what she found was, and I'm sure you relate to, is that there was so much, and Dawn touched on this, and so did Sandra beautifully. There's so much that's out of your hands. There's uncertainty about the future, uncertainty about diagnosis, prognosis. There's even uncertainty about how much support you're going to get. And what parents told us, what we saw in the data, was they try to put some of that stuff on the back burner. I can't control it. I'm going to put it on the back burner. And then what they do is they try to manage the things that is in their hands. And that there's a lot that's in your hands. And some of the stuff you tend to gravitate to is the physical. So protecting your child from infection, mastering complex care, medications, feeds, oxygen, monitoring your child, medications, growth, weight gain. And what we came to describe is that there's typical parenting, and all of you do typical parenting. And then we as professionals, we add on all these expectations that really puts you into vigilant parenting. And for very many situations and times in your child's life, you need to be vigilant. But what we're seeing perhaps as healthcare professionals is that we don't do a good job of pulling you back from some of that vigilance when the time is right. And what we start to see is there's sometimes you get into a place of exaggerated vigilant parenting where you're still doing things to protect your child that you maybe don't need to do. And this is not about pointing the finger at you. This is about pointing fingers at us as professionals in terms of what are we doing that we maybe could be doing differently. And so I proceeded again with another study, and this was a study where I really wanted to look more at the needs of parents in maybe some more specific ways, and start to see where some of the needs might be. So this was a study where I love interviewing, so I kept interviewing parents, but I also did the dreaded questionnaires, and I thank every one of you who've ever filled out a questionnaire because it does give us some numbers to go with the stories. And we had 51 parents fill out questionnaires. We had a lot of parents do interviews. We ended up doing focus groups after we put the findings together with both professionals and parents. We had a range of children because we've got more and more survivors in terms of HLHS. So the age range in this study was from 9 months to parents having children who were 16 years old with HLHS. And I'm just going to go right to the punchline in terms of what were our key findings from this study. And I'll give you a few more details. But essentially, the findings that we're publishing are that, bottom line, parents live through traumatic experiences. Parents face an uncertain future with their child. They experience significant financial burden, and they're having to navigate a complex system that often doesn't seem prepared. Parents struggle to prepare their child for subsequent surgeries, and often parents are further traumatized by their child's stress reactions in those subsequent hospitalizations and visits. Children, if you know anything about regulation, this is not a pretty picture in terms of this little baby. Bottom line, in terms of the findings that we have, is that children with complex congenital heart disease have regulatory challenges. There are sleep issues, feeding, sensory. We've heard some beautiful content on that even today. Behavior issues that require intervention. We also find that we're missing some valuable linkages with early intervention and community support, and often it's due to all that goes on in these early years around surgeries. And what we're also finding is that children are not being adequately monitored and supported at school age, and that's what we were hearing about from our wonderful panel for developmental and learning challenges. And our children experience stress reactions, especially when returning for procedures and surgeries, which possibly is related to earlier trauma. So again, I'll present some numbers, but I've also got to present some of the words of the parents. And so the parents tell us about their anxiety. This is a parent thinking about an upcoming surgery. I can't imagine us going through the third surgery. Just the fact that she can talk and communicate, that scares me to death. Again, we've heard about the emotional roller coaster. And this one parent said, it's different. It's one thing at a baby, but it's different where we now, and this one dad said, you've grown to like them. You even love them. You know their personalities. And it's like, you want me to take them back? There's dread. She's too young to really understand what's going to happen. We're going to be there 24/7 because if she wakes up and there's nobody there, there will be tubes flying everywhere. And I always look at this one and think, you are worrying about the things that I'm supposed to worry about. It's a lot that you're carrying. And again, specifically, we talk about the Fontan because that's the world I live with, HLHS. But parents really struggle how to prepare their children for any upcoming surgery. There's the wrestling. I wanted to talk to him about it and let him know that he's going for surgery. He's got to know it's his body, it's his life. We've got to tell him. But then there's that other struggle that says, why would you burden him with that? He's too young to understand. So there's that protectiveness. Again, Don talked about the trauma. I want surgery over with. Sometimes my heart flutters when I think about the Fontan. Every time I go to the hospital, I'm nervous. I'll hyperventilate. Memories come back. And so we have the parent's story, but then we have the child's story. And parents describing this. This poor kid, he had no idea. He just thought he was going for tests, and all of a sudden people are taking him, and the next thing he knew, he was just looking around and he didn't know what he was. He must have felt like he was hit by a Mack truck. He fell into a depression. Often parents feel like their child thinks that they've betrayed them. Every time she looked at us, she had a hurt look on her face. Then I had to poke her fingers. This is for blood testing. And it was like, not you too, Mommy. It was the last straw. What did you do? Why did you let this happen to me? Aren't you going to tell them to stop? And then we get the behavior. One mom says, he had such an easy personality before the Fontan. He became a totally different person. He used to run to me for meds, and now we're pinning him down. Everything seemed like a battle. And of course, there's skill regression. He was potty trained, now he's no longer potty trained. Sleep became an issue. So again, there's this needing to really live this experience of surgery in Technicolor. We talk about the emotional recovery, and one of the things that's hardest for me in this data is parents describe how difficult it is emotionally, and they also describe that the things that used to comfort the child, the last quote, I've never seen a child so sad. He wouldn't talk. He used to suck his thumb, but he wouldn't even suck his thumb. And some of them, he didn't even like ice cream. So all these things that used to be comforting, at some stages, nothing comforts the child. And you know that feeling of nothing comforts you. So again, I'm not big on numbers, but funders love numbers. And so I just want to put it out there that we have found some really good tools. And this one, I want you to, with the funders, I use this negatively, but I want you to see all the parents on the top. Can you see all the parents up here. We do a scale that where you report your resilience, but we have a wonderful way of scoring this where we can see where you line up. And so 37% of our parents are actually scoring similarly. This is not anything about diagnosis, but they're scoring similarly for individuals that are being treated with PTSD, anxiety, or a psychiatric condition in an outpatient setting. So you can see that we do have a few parents that are struggling, dads and moms, and we got to pay attention to that. Parenting stress. A lot of you are scoring okay on the parenting stress, but 32% you are in the clinically significant range for parenting stress. I find this a reassuring slide because this shows green are mothers, purple is fathers, and these are the different breakdowns of parenting stress. And what I love about this slide is that mothers and fathers are kind of equal in their parenting stress. So this is one for the dads. They're carrying this stress as well. This is not just a bunch of stressed moms. But again, let's get back to the baby and the parent, the child and the parent, the teen and the parent. What I'm really, part of my journey for the next number of years as a researcher and as an advocate for parents and families of children in pediatric cardiology is I'm really fighting now that we need to have regular assessments of child and parent emotional states in the clinic setting. We check everything else. We also are working in our center to develop and implement and evaluate a child and parent-focused intervention pre-Fontan. And I'm going to spend the last few minutes telling you about an attachment-based parenting program that we're starting to look at that we think will have relevance for parents like yourselves. And it's called Circle of Security. So I'm going to shift now to tell you about some ways to really build the and as you parent. And this is a slide I often use in parenting groups about what parenting is like. You can just be amazed. It's like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And then what we do is we add the vigilant parenting and the exaggerated vigilant parenting, so the maze becomes even more complicated. And what we think in terms of a more emotion-focused approach, this little sign used to say the way, and I changed that this morning. I thought, it's not the way, it's a way that you might be able to get through this maze of parenting that you are in. And I've touched a bit on some of the behavior that we all have when we're in trouble, when we're feeling pressed on every side. And what we're really looking at our center is how do we all move from a focus on behavior to a focus on emotion? And this is a quote from Circle of Security parenting program. Children will settle for attention, but what they really need is a deeper connection. The loving support of someone they can return to when they find it necessary. And another quote that we use is, being difficult is not your child's first choice. And we also even say that about parents, as a parent, being difficult is not your first choice when you're in the healthcare system. It takes a lot of energy to be difficult. But really, some of that difficult behavior is a yearning for connection. And we say this is not about a child wanting attention. This is about a child that's wanting connection. And, we've got 30 years of security and attachment research backing up what we're trying to do with this program. But essentially what we're trying to get parents to think about is, can you do things that make sense to your child? And can you figure out a way to make sense of your child, right? So everything is making sense back and forth. And that's what we call coherence, and that's going to lead to a secure relationship. And so, I'm just going to give you a real quick overview of the Circle of Security, and I hope to leave you, not that you're going to understand all of this, but I just want to give you a view of something that you already see and do every day. And what we say in this way of parenting or this way of viewing your child is that you are hands for your child. So just imagine, you are the hands for your child. And let's say this hand provides a secure base from which your child, oh, there's my timer, I'm getting there. I set a timer. You're providing a secure base from which your child goes out to explore. We talk about this top of the circle. And you are there to, first of all, delight as they go out on the top of the circle. And as a baby, that's just even when they look away from you. As a teenager, that's when they're out partying all night. But you need to be that secure base, and you need to support your child's exploration as they're going out. And then 1,000 times a day as a baby and 10 times a day as a teenager, you're then the bottom hand, which is the safe haven to which your child returns. They always come back. They always come back. And you need to be there to welcome them back. And where I really see the beauty of this, thinking about how you welcome them back, is that those are those moments where you're protecting them, you're comforting them, you're delighting in them, but you're helping them organize their feelings. And I think that where we have talked a lot in the last 10 years about neurodevelopmental outcomes, and it's at a conference 10 years ago, we would have not had such strength around the education aspects and such advocacy. And I think in the next 10 years, this is where we're moving, is we got to really learn how, for you as parents to organize your feelings, and for us to learn how to help children organize their feelings. And this is a slide I also use. You are the hands for your child, and there are many, many who want to be hands for you. And in many ways, this meeting is about how you are being hands for each other, how you are connecting each other, how you're cheering each other on as you're on the top of the circle, sending your kid off to school, sending your child off to university, but you're also helping each other in some of these bottoms of the circle moments where you need comfort, you need someone to delight in terms of how you're showing your emotions, and you need help with those more organization of your feelings. And we just want to be reflective. Sometimes we just want to do stuff, but sometimes we just need to stand there and pay attention. Don't just do something. Stand there, pay attention. Your child is trying to tell you something, and that's often the behavior. In that behavior, they're trying to communicate something to you. So again, I think a big goal is going to be if we can engage parents to think about their children and also think about yourselves. And that's what Dawn is really encouraging you to do. Think about your child and yourselves in terms of the internal experience rather than the more external behavior. And that's where you'll have a chance to really connect with your child and connect with each other as you're really paying attention to that emotion. And that's the power of the and. Thank you.